In this video, I'm going to show you how to take this cheap contractor's grade bathroom fan and upgrade it to a nice quiet Panasonic fan that has a little LED light built into the bottom of it. I'm going to make it real easy for you. This is Rudy from the Home Improvement channel with another video showing you how to fix things around the house. If you're a subscribed member to my community, then welcome back. If you're new to this channel, consider clicking that subscribe button below, and please like this video if you found it helpful for you. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive right in. Okay, so I'm going to be doing most of this job from underneath. Our attic access is pretty limited because the proximity of the fan is so close to the edge of the outside wall, there's barely any room there. There's maybe a foot. And that's just a little tight for me. I'm old, so I may have to go up in the attic a couple of times, but mostly I'm going to be doing it from down here. Now, I already went up in the attic and swept most of the insulation from around the fan to try to limit the amount that falls down. So first thing we got to do is get this fan out of here. You just start off with pulling this down like so. Here you can see this one better. Just squeeze and pull, and there's just nothing to it. So a few years ago, I did a fan video with one that was just like this one, where you just remove the housing out of the middle, and you can either replace the housing if yours is quit or it's squeaking, and I showed you how to take it apart and clean it and all that. Very simple to get this out of here. You just kind of pry like so. There we go. All right, so the next thing we need to do is get this housing out of here. So what I'm going to do, I know the joist is on this side right here, so we don't want to make our new fan go this way. And it's obviously this is going to work better if your new fan is bigger than the old fan. That way we can cut around this on the drywall first before we try to get this out of here. It'll make things a lot easier. So what we're going to do, this is the template that the new fan came with. I'm going to split the difference, you know, here and here, so that we have some room on both sides. So I'm squaring this up with the hole right here. We're just going to extend this and trace around here. So we have a line here. I'm going to grab my oscillating tool and cut the drywall out. And we'll just work this drywall off of here carefully, trying not to damage our good drywall that we want to keep. All right, so at this point, you're going to want to have your power cut off. Now, a lot of times you can cut off your switch if you've only got 2 wires coming to your fan, and that's sufficient to cut the power off to the fan. But if somebody comes along and turns the switch on, you might want to put a piece of tape over your switch. But in this case, since I'm going to be wiring the LED light separately, okay, so that the LED light will be on its own switch, I'm going to have to add a piece of wire. So I've cut the power off at the breaker. This is where the power comes in, so just kind of pull down on this to get it loose. There's just 3 wire nuts here. There's nothing to this. All right, so this one has this plastic grommet in here, as you can see here. Normally, if there's just a regular Romex connector, you'll have a nut there. So just undo that nut, but this one doesn't have that. So I've pried the plastic fingers apart just a little bit so that I can release the wire. There we go. So we're getting close. This fan has 2 tabs here and one over here that is screwed to the truss. And luckily, this one is on screws, okay? As you can see, they have a hook here for nails. So I'm going to undo the 2 screws that are holding the housing to the truss. All right, so I've discovered this housing has these tabs right here. Well, the same thing is over here. Well, they've put 2 screws or nails or something right here where the drywall is. I don't want to cut this drywall out because I don't know if it's going to show on the new one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right here and right here. There we go. That's all we had to do right there. Do the same thing to the other side. And this screw over here, I'll have to work this one loose because the exhaust vent is in the way. Got the tape started. I'll just kind of pull this off. By the way, you're working with sheet metal here. Be careful of these sharp corners because they'll get you. All right, so got the exhaust vent loose right here. There we go, we popped the exhaust loose. Now we can get to our screw and we are free. All right, so next, this is the bracket that goes to the fan, and how this works is it expands and it will screw to the joist right here and right here. So I'll put it up here and then expand it between the joists, okay? Okay, so you remember at the beginning I said that I was going to have to change the wire. I've gone from a 12-2 to a 12-3. This one has the red wire, which will allow me to turn my light on via a different switch. Now, if you're not going to do this, then don't worry about this step. You can just hook your old wire up, and I'll show you about that when I get to the wiring. But anyway, I've restapled the new wire to the same joist and the same spots that the old wire was at. And then we'll go up in the attic in a few minutes and I'll show you how I'm going to get that wire back to the switch. Also, I don't know if you noticed or not, but these rails have a hole, right? There's two metal rails running next to each other with a gap in the middle. And these screws will go up in between that gap right there. So that's how it attaches to the rail. Pretty nice little system. So we have all our whites are tied together. We have our ground tied to the green, and this unit has a regular light and also it has a night light. So I didn't care if the regular light came on with the fan, so I tied the fan motor and the regular light together with the power source here, and then I took the red one and tied it to the night light so that I can run the night light by itself. Now, if you wanted to leave everything alone with your standard 12-2 wire, you could tie this black wire together with these and then eliminate the red wire and all the lights will come on together. Okay, so that's the wiring. I'm going to put these back in the box and put the cover on. All right, so I've got my wire hooked up and the box is closed back. So in order to get this thing up in the ceiling, this particular model has a screw right in here. There's an arrow here. You got to remove this screw and then this part will separate just like this. You have to unhook the fan motor. Make sure you unhook the fan motor from the plug, and then that will separate like that, and that makes it much easier to work with. I have to put a 90 on the exhaust and pipe it over to here. That way the fan is in this way, like so, right, like that. And then I have to hook that up right there. So I'm not going to be able to show that very well, but I've got a 90 here. I'm using the silver HVAC tape to tape these connections together. And then I'm going to go over that with a worm clamp, like so. I'm going to tape it first and then clamp it. You can also use these heavy-duty wire ties that they make for that stuff. All right, so there's my install from the top. All right, looks pretty good. Here's my new wire. Got it stapled to the joist right here. And there's the rest of it. So we're going to attempt to feed that down the wall. Just wanted to show you a top view. All right, so here's the moment we've all been waiting for. I've got the exhaust all hooked up, as you saw earlier. And I've got this in place. Now this flange right here goes on the bottom of the drywall, otherwise it won't fit. If you try to put it on top of the drywall, you won't be able to pull it close enough together to line the screws back up. So this has got a rail right here, and this has got a corresponding rail right here that goes up in there. So just carefully slide these two together, and you can kind of grab this rail here, or flange, and pull it together like so, and upsy daisy, right? And then put the screws in. And like I said earlier, these rails have a gap in between, so it doesn't matter where the fan is on the rail, it's still going to find a place to screw into. Now obviously, before I'm done with this, I have to go back up in the attic and fix all the insulation back so that we don't have a big air leak right here. All right, so don't forget to plug your fan motor back in right here. With one side, and then we will plug our light in. There we go, right there. Voila, there we go. So if we weren't going to change the wire, we'd be done. But now we have to change the wire before we can test it. All right, so real quick, I need to change out these two switches for a 3-gang box. Now, yeah, you could put one of those stacked switches that's got two switches like this that are vertical, but I've got so many wires inside this box already, I don't want to add more wires. It'll overload the box, so I'm just going to take out the box and install a 3-gang box. Obviously, right now, you're going to want to make sure the power's off. I like to use one of these guys right here, and you just kind of go in here and feel around and make sure your power's off, and it is. I have cut the power off at the breaker, but that is something you definitely want to make sure of. All right, let's get the switches out of the way. Now you'll probably want to take note of how everything is hooked up. I've got the main coming in here. I've got two pigtails, one for each switch. And then, of course, I've got one going somewhere else, and I suspect that is going to the GFI plug that's for the bathroom. So, obviously, all the commons are tied together. All right, yours is probably going to be different, but I'm just showing you this example so you can get an idea. So we're going to take all these apart. We have to get the box out. Now if you notice here, they didn't use one of those copper rings that squeeze together that are compressed, which is good because sometimes those are hard to get off. They use the green wire nut instead. But if you do have one of those copper rings, you'll have to break that one off any way you can without damaging the wires. All right, so I've got all the wires loose. I've kind of straightened them out so they'll pull out the back a little bit better. But for now, I'm going to kind of stuff them back in here for a reason. All right, so I'm holding up my new box so I can trace it. And there we go. So I kind of took a screwdriver and pried the little fingers, the little clamps in the back of the box loose a little bit more. That will make that easier to release that. If you have a pry bar like this will help get this loose. Notice I'm pushing away from the drywall. If you go this way, you're going to damage the drywall. So just slowly work those nails loose. There we go. If you have an oscillating tool for this, this would be really helpful. You got to cut these areas where the nails are up. There we go. Now you just kind of have to work the wires loose. All right, so I've identified my wire that originally went to the bath fan, and I've looked up inside the wall, and I found that they didn't use the regular metal staples, but they used those plastic cable stackers instead, which is good. So I may be able to pull this one up, and if that's the case, I'll just hopefully be able to fish the new wire down through the same hole, which would be great. All right, so cool. I've identified this as my fan wire, the old fan wire, and that came right out, so that's great. Oh yeah, yep, it fit. All right, so if that new wire didn't fit through the same hole, I would have had to drill a new hole next to that hole, okay? So when you do that, be very careful when you're drilling not to drill where you're so close you're going to hit one of the existing wires. I did that once a long time ago, and it was a lot of trouble to fix that wire, okay? So just be real careful when you're drilling there. And also, it doesn't look like they stuffed this hole full of any kind of spray foam. So you'll want to use the Fire Block spray foam. It's orange, and you just want to spray it around that hole. All right, so that went very smoothly. We're going to cut our cable off, making sure it's not too short. We've got plenty of cutoff here. Now I got this box here for a old work box. Instead of having the flippy things behind the drywall, it's got two screws that screw in at an angle into the stud. And I kind of like this box. It's pretty nice. All right, so I've cracked open my little clamps here. Just stick a screwdriver in there and pry them back and forth is all you got to do. So just work all your wires in. I'm not going to show all this because you see what I'm doing here. Okay, got all the wires in. Just screw this puppy down. So this new wire is the only one that we need to peel back. So just use a razor knife and just peel it like a banana. Try to stay in the middle, is what I always do. And then cut it up in here. There we go. All right, so I like to usually start with the whites because I stuff them back in the back of the box and out of sight, out of mind. So tie all your whites together. I like to twist them real good. Make sure they're all about the same length does help. So twist them up about like that. Move everything out of the way and I kind of fold it back like so and push it to the back. All right, so in my case, I have the B+, I have the plug, and then I have my 3 pigtails, and they all go together. Now yours may be different. Just take your time. And by the way, I'm using lineman's pliers to twist these together, and this style of wire strippers to cut the ends off right here, in case you didn't know that. All right, once you get your blacks all twisted together, do the same thing with them and shove it in the back. Trying to keep everything kind of tight in the back in case you ever want to put a dimmer in there. So we got 3 pigtails, 1 for each switch. Now with these grounds, I'm leaving 2 long ones here. One of them is going to get wrapped around 2 switches, and the other one is going to go to the 3rd switch. So we're kind of going to do it the same way that he had it before. Now in this one, I went ahead and put on a copper ring. Just crimp that baby down and call it a day. All right, so I'm just going to show connecting one switch real quick. Basically, I just bend these into a loop. So I've got my 3 pigtails, 1 going to each switch, and then the other 3 is my vanity light, my fan, and my fan light. Okay, so that's very simple. Let's connect our switch. One of these is our feed, and one of these is our vanity light in this case. Just tighten that puppy down. And when you do the loop in the direction that you're tightening the screw. By the way, I'm using this ECX screwdriver that fits these screws very well. I did another video on this a couple weeks ago, and I'll put the link to it in the corner. It's very cool. All right, so there's one switch. Basically, I just kind of fold my wires back until they fit and inspect the grounds and anything that needs inspected to make sure nothing is touching where it's not supposed to be touching. All right, got it all back together, got the power turned on. Let's see if it works. Works like a champ. Nice and quiet. Let's turn that off. Here's the night light. Nice little light right there. And then our 3rd switch was just for the vanity light. Okay, so I hope this video has been helpful. Thanks for watching.